Vivian Cole wasn't just any elderly woman. She was 68 years old, with silver hair coiled neatly beneath a beret, and she walked with the calm grace of someone who had known both struggle and strength. In her Baltimore neighborhood, most people knew her as Miss Vivian, the kindly grandma who once worked in government, baked cookies every Christmas, and always had an extra seat at the dinner table. What they didn't know was that Miss Vivian had been one of the FBI's top behavioral analysts for over 3 decades. She'd broken major cases, worked undercover assignments, trained agents at Quantico, and carried herself with a kind of controlled intensity that meant she never had to raise her voice to be heard. Though retired, she still kept her credentials and badge in her purse, more out of habit than pride. That Tuesday began like any other. The sun hung lazily over the Baltimore skyline as Vivian pulled on a long beige trench coat, slipped into her walking shoes, and grabbed her leather handbag. She had a grocery list: salmon, asparagus, wine, just enough for the dinner she was preparing for 2 former colleagues later that night. She strolled slowly along the block, passing familiar faces, nodding politely as she glanced down at her list. Then she paused near her car, a tan BMW she'd recently had serviced, to double-check that she'd locked it. She fished in her bag for her key fob, glancing at the passenger seat, then at her watch. Just then, Officer Jackson Hart, a rookie beat cop making solo rounds in the area, turned the corner. He'd just received a vague dispatch: suspicious activity, older black female seen near multiple vehicles. Possibly casing for break-ins. It wasn't much to go on, but Jackson was young, eager, on edge, and still believing that fast action proved competence. He spotted Vivian immediately. Elderly. Black. Male reported movement near a car. Location matched the call. His foot slammed the brake. The squad car jolted to a stop. Then it happened fast. "No sudden moves," he shouted, one hand hovering near his belt as he rushed toward her. Startled, Vivian turned, squinting from behind her sunglasses. "Excuse me." Jackson didn't slow down. "Step away from the vehicle." "Hands where I can see them." Confused and alarmed, Vivian instinctively reached into her purse to retrieve her ID, but she never got the chance. Hart grabbed her arm, spun her around, and slammed her forward onto the hood of the BMW with the kind of force that knocked her handbag to the ground and knocked the wind from her chest. Pain surged through her shoulder. Her cheek pressed cold against the metal hood. "That's enough, officer." Her voice was low, but sharp. "Look in my bag. You're making a serious mistake." But Hart wasn't listening. His instincts, not his training, were in control now. And the woman beneath his hands? He didn't yet know he'd just handcuffed an FBI legend. And in about 60 seconds, he would regret everything. It was one of those perfect Saturdays. The sky was painted in soft blue, birds chirped from the nearby trees, and the laughter of children filled the air like music. Claire sat on a wooden bench near the playground, her designer leather bag beside her, phone in hand. She scrolled through emails, half-focused, but her eyes kept darting to the swing set ahead, where Lily, her quiet little girl, gently swayed back and forth. Lily, in her usual silence, grasped the swing's chains tightly. Her white dress fluttered slightly with the breeze, her soft brown hair tucked neatly behind her ears. Her eyes pointed downward, absorbing the motion, lost in her own world. This had become routine. The same swing. The same silence. Claire brought her here every weekend, hoping, just hoping, that one day the laughter of other children might pull her daughter out of the quiet. Then, something new happened. From the far sidewalk, a man entered the park, tall, broad-shouldered, calm. His skin glowed under the summer sun. At his side bounced a little boy, curly-haired and barefoot in the grass, laughing loudly as he pointed to the swings. Claire's glance shifted back to her phone, then did a double-take. The man's expression was different from other parents. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't rushed. He was simply present. His energy was steady, grounding, like someone who didn't just come to the park, but belonged in it. The boy tugged at his hand excitedly, and they made their way to the swing next to Lily. The man crouched down, carefully adjusting the straps on the seat to fit his son. As he pushed him gently, the boy's laughter rose into the air like joy bottled in a sound. Lily glanced over. Just once. Just a moment. But the man noticed. He smiled softly, not the forced kind adults give children out of habit, but the real kind that makes you feel seen. He looked her in the eyes and, in a voice as gentle as the wind, asked, "Hey there. What's your name?" Claire's heart skipped. She instantly placed her phone down and began to rise. Ready to respond, ready to offer the usual apology. She doesn't talk. But before she could speak, she paused. Because something felt different. He didn't speak down to Lily. He didn't use goofy, exaggerated talk. He didn't turn to Claire for answers. Instead, he simply waited, peacefully, as if he wasn't afraid of the silence. There was no pressure, no pity. Just pure, patient kindness. His presence didn't demand attention, but gently welcomed it. Lily looked at him again. Just a second, and then back down. But Claire saw it. That flicker. The smallest shift. Where others had spoken too loudly, tried too hard, or avoided her daughter completely, this man did none of that. He merely showed up, fully, respectfully, with warmth instead of worry. Claire didn't know it yet, but in that one quiet exchange, a door had been opened. And what came next would be something she never expected. Let me know if you'd like the next section, The Moment Time Froze, expanded as well. I can also help match this with background visuals, music suggestions, and voiceover pacing to create the perfect storytelling video. Within hours of the incident, the body cam footage had made its way up the chain of command, and once the recording hit the hands of city officials, the silence was replaced by panic. The video was damning. Raw. Unforgiving. It showed Officer Hart approaching with intensity, barking orders before asking questions, and forcing a 68-year-old woman, who had committed no crime, against her own car. It showed her FBI credentials falling into plain view. And most of all, it showed the look on her face, composed, but filled with a kind of disappointment that spoke louder than anger. Vivian Cole wasn't looking for revenge. She didn't call reporters that night. She didn't take legal action immediately. But she did file a formal complaint, clearly, calmly, and by the book. I've seen situations like this destroy trust between communities and officers for generations, she said in a statement the next morning. But now I've lived it. If this can happen to someone with a badge, with decades of service, it makes me wonder what's happening to those without. Within hours of her interview hitting local news, the internet took over. #GrannyIsFBI exploded on Twitter and TikTok. Users shared side-by-side photos of Vivian, one snapped from her FBI retirement ceremony in 2018, standing tall in front of an American flag. The other, a blurred screenshot from the leaked body cam footage, bent over a BMW, her hands mid-cuff. Celebrities posted support. Civil rights advocates called for accountability. Influencers stitched reaction videos. You mean to tell me you tackled an FBI agent because she was a black grandma near her own car? Some posts were funny, most were furious, but all of them pointed toward the same painful truth, that suspicion can be deadly when mixed with bias. Vivian's case just happened to have a badge and a camera clearing her name. Late-night hosts covered the story. So did the New York Times and CNN. Yet Baltimore PD, silent. For 3 days, they offered no press release, no disciplinary updates, no response to mounting pressure. That silence was noticed, and it only added fuel to the fire. On day 4, the mayor made a public promise. We are launching a full and independent review of this incident. Any misconduct, bias, or failure of procedure will be dealt with accordingly. But for many in the community, the damage had already been done. What made this case different wasn't just Vivian's federal status. It was the fact that everyone could see the wrong happen, in real time, on camera. There was no gray area. No justification. And through it all, Vivian stood as the eye of the storm. Her grace, her professionalism, her refusal to scream, even when she had every right to erupt, that's what struck people the most. Because in her quiet, measured response, the world heard something louder than any protest chant. If this can happen to her, who's truly safe? Just when the public thought the story would fade, like so many others before it, Vivian Cole turned the entire narrative on its head. While most were demanding justice through firings, lawsuits, and media trials, she quietly requested something that surprised everyone: a private meeting with Officer Jackson Hart. Her lawyer advised against it. Vivian, This could jeopardize any legal leverage you have. It's a bad move. Prominent voices in the activist community were even harsher. This officer humiliated you in broad daylight. Why offer him anything but accountability? But Vivian wasn't looking for revenge. She was looking for transformation. I've spent 30 years studying human behavior, she explained. You don't change a system only by punishing the broken. You change it by reprogramming the ones still worth saving. And she believed Jackson Hart might still be one of them. The meeting took place in a small, sterile conference room at the precinct, a place where officers were usually briefed before raids or debriefed after incidents. Now, it would become the unlikely setting of something historic. Vivian entered wearing a navy blue blazer and carried nothing but a notepad. Officer Hart sat waiting, fidgeting with a pen, tension written all over his body. He avoided eye contact at first, clearly humbled and scared. When their eyes finally met, he stumbled over his words. I didn't mean to do any harm, Agent Cole. I thought I was responding by the book. She leaned in slightly, her voice calm but surgical. Officer Hart, if that's your version of doing things by the book, this department, and this city, is in more trouble than I thought. Hart opened his mouth to respond, but Vivian raised her hand slightly. I'm not here for an apology, she continued. I've heard enough apologies in my life that meant nothing. Hart froze. I'm here, she said, to offer you a choice. Now, his eyes met hers, confused, unsure. You can be fired and walk away in disgrace. That would absolutely be justified. Or, she paused, straightening a loose page on her notepad. You can train with me. Train, he repeated, stunned. Vivian nodded. I spent 15 years leading the FBI's behavioral profiling programs. I trained agents in crisis de-escalation, cultural sensitivity, observation, and, most importantly, how not to let fear write your decisions. Hart didn't say anything. The room was silent, except for the buzz of a weak overhead light and the rhythm of his breath. I'll be honest, she added. This won't be easy. You'll have to confront more than procedures. You'll have to confront yourself. But if you're willing to listen, to learn, and to lead by example, I believe there's a future where you're not a problem, but part of the solution. That moment didn't erase what had happened. It didn't excuse the harm done. But it changed the path forward, for both of them. Because instead of becoming another headline lost in outrage, Vivian Cole had just planted a seed. And that seed was about to grow into something far more powerful than punishment. It would become progress. 6 months later, the story that had once shocked the nation came full circle. Officer Jackson Hart stood beside Vivian Cole at a City Hall press conference, not as the disgraced rookie who had handcuffed an innocent woman, but as a changed man. Not in shame, but in solidarity. Between them hung a banner with bold letters. COLE, Community-Oriented Law Enforcement. A new initiative launched and led by Vivian herself. Though it carried her last name, she made it clear from day one, it wasn't named after her, it was named for someone far more personal. Her father, Lewis Cole, a schoolteacher and civil rights activist, who had been wrongly assaulted by police during a peaceful march in the 1960s. He never pressed charges, but the pain never left her family. COLE, Vivian told the crowd, is for every person like him, and for every officer who still wants to be better than this broken system has allowed them to be. The program didn't just talk about problems, it tackled them head-on. Retired law enforcement officers from federal, state, and community levels came together to train current officers in de-escalation techniques, bias recognition, communication psychology, and real-world scenario testing. And Jackson Hart, he wasn't just a student. He became its first success story, and its loudest supporter. I was raised to believe I had to protect people, he said at the podium, looking out at a sea of cameras and flashing lights. But no one taught me how to see the people I was actually protecting. Vivian did. The mayor echoed the impact. In just 90 days, we saw a 60% drop in complaints filed against our rookies. Community trust polls rose for the first time in years. This isn't just a program, it's a prototype for real reform. Media outlets nationwide picked it up. What started as a national controversy had evolved into a beacon of possibility. Cities from Los Angeles to Atlanta reached out, asking to model COLE in their departments. A mistake had become a movement. And through it all, Vivian? She returned to a quiet life. She still went for walks. Still held her head high. Still carried her badge, not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder of the long road behind her. That same corner where she'd been slammed against her car? She passed it often. Sometimes with a smile. Sometimes with quiet reflection. But always walking, always forward. Because what once was a place of humiliation had become something bigger. A story. A lesson. A turning point. And for many, a hope. Movie camera ending note. For YouTube. Sometimes, change doesn't erupt from riots or headlines. It unfolds in moments where someone stays standing, when the world expects them to fall. Vivian Cole didn't throw punches or seek revenge. She brought wisdom into a room full of noise, and made people listen. Her power wasn't in her badge. It was in her presence. In how she transformed a mistake into a mission. In how she turned pain into purpose. So before you judge someone, before you assume, ask yourself who you're really looking at. Because the next time you misjudge someone, you might just end up cuffing the FBI.